Everyone, welcome back to the Jay Smith Down podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and I'm here today with Rusty Byrd over at the Kirk and Byrd Show. Appreciate him coming on the show today to talk some football.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Always, man. I love having you on. So, Rusty, the Lions, man, I've been getting a lot of love this offseason, and rightfully so, because they've been making a lot of good moves for their franchise. And so, I mean, they bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles, for example. Cam Sutton signing him away from the Steelers. Like they're really addressing the defense, which is a big problem for them the last couple of years. So I want to hear your thoughts on them and how they've been managing this offense. You like what you've seen so far from Detroit?
So for me, I think I won't be able to grade or say too much about the Lions until, well, first of all, let me just start. They're the Lions, okay? It's still the Lions. Now, the way they finished the season was really, I thought was strong and it was good, but they're still the Lions. So I don't trust them until they actually put it all together. But these all, I mean, for a lot of people, the off season is the time people like to get excited and think and dream and hope. But I can't really give them a complete grade until they draft. And I think that's kind of where I stand with the Lions. Last year they finished 9-8, so they had a winning record. They had they finished the season on a 2-game winning streak. But I think for me, I'd like to see, one, if that defense comes together, if they have, if the coordinator with the athletes they're going to put on the field is going to put it all together. Because, for me personally, these last couple of years, it's been such horrible management, the hiring of I'm a little biased also because I didn't think they ever should have fired. Why can't I think of his name? The coach who had been in Indianapolis.
You talking about Jim Caldwell?
Jim Caldwell, yeah. So why are we getting excited for what Jim Caldwell was producing at a minimum regularly? You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's kind of where I am. I'm a big supporter of, the Detroit Lions coaching staff that they have in place now. But I just, Jim Caldwell was doing this for you routinely. So, okay, but that's my thoughts. I just really would like to see it all put together because on paper, it should be better, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll have to see when you put it all on the field, you get those guys out there, and can they come together, can they play sound football for 4 quarters and find a way to win football games, and that's going to be the big thing about them. I mean, the NFC North, as itself, you got the Vikings, who we talked about before. They end up with 13 wins, but they just, fortunately for them, the defense was just atrocious. So that's why they didn't go very far. Then you look at the Packers. Enough. That's all that has to be said about them. And then the Bears, who are also making some moves. I know you're kind of what you're Justin Fields guy. So real quick with the Bears, man, do you like what they've been doing so far?
Not really. I mean, that's my team, but I still don't. I don't. I like the Justin Fields draft. Him being picked, but I still like. I'm not feeling him yet as my team's quarterback. I think the thing he did that made him a bit productive last year was running, and I don't see that being a long-term solution. I think he really is going to need some receivers. I've said it before. When you gave Tua and Jalen Hurts such outstanding receivers, they really started to shine and look good. And again, Jalen Hurts said it, but it was actually true. He just shouldn't have said it in public. He had better receivers in college than he has in the league. So if he can get some better receivers and they can put a few more things together, I think they can be okay. But I also think that whole division is really down. Like right now, who would you say would you predict to win that division?
Right now, I mean, I'm still going to have to go with the Vikings just because from a standpoint of, experience and talent-wise, I'm going to have to go with Minnesota.
Right.
They just clear and hire, the better team in that division. Just from what I've seen, right? Because they've been consistently, in the playoffs and a multi-win team, versus the double-digit win team versus the Lions and the Bears, who I'm like, they're making moves, but I don't really know.
Right.
I gotta see it. Like you said, I gotta see it happen on the field. I gotta see them go out there and win consistently, and find a way to get it done. But I haven't, so I would say the Vikings, right?
So, right, and I agree, because one of the things I think you can easily kind of do, not easy, but one of the things you can do is when you're trying to just start out by picking who you think is going to win the division is just look at the quarterbacks, okay? Now, I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins fan, but of the people in that division, he's the most tenured, experienced, and he played well enough last year to lead them 13-4. Although I think it's a little misleading just because I think that division was not as good. But when you talk about quarterback situations, going back to Detroit, Jared Goff is still your quarterback. And so you can say, everybody can say everything they want to say about the Lions in the offseason, but you still have Jared Goff. I'm not saying he's that bad, but I'm saying if we're looking at quarterbacks and what do you want him to be able, where do you want him to take you? Is he a placeholder? Is he the one? Because what is your standard if you're Detroit? Is it just make the playoffs? Is it make it through because I'm sure Minnesota was happy last year they made the playoffs, but in the end, like, okay, they didn't advance. So what is your goal? And then what are the pieces you have, like with that quarterback situation?
Yeah. What is the goal? What is the standard, right? The Lions, they almost made the playoffs. So I get, like you said, I guess they making the playoffs is just the standard for them, because right now that's really all their talent really allows them to do from what I've seen at this moment. Maybe just to squeak in there. They almost did last year. And Jared Goff, I'm not. Jared Goff is a player to me, like you said. He's a system guy. He that system in LA with Sean McVay, it made him. He had some good years there. Under that offense there. They went to the Super Bowl. Heck, but he is not a long-term answer. So that begs the question: do the Lions look for a quarterback in this draft? I think they should. Do you agree?
I think they should start to look towards the future. I think you've got enough people playing quarterback in this draft that I don't think I'd necessarily go first round.
Oh, no, right? First round.
No. Like if you can find a good not even under the radar, but somebody good in the in the second round. What would have been nice is if Anthony Richardson had actually flown under the radar, but because based on his productivity at Florida, he was just okay. But when you get to the combine and you show out like that, I think I think he's going to go very early, much earlier than anybody going into the last college football season could have imagined. But it would have been nice for him. I hope he's able to go to a situation kind of like Detroit where there's an established starter. He gets to learn, and then he can maybe come in certain packages, but develop and grow and have time. I don't think he's going to have a lot of success if somebody says, you're our first round pick, you've got to be there and do this.
Absolutely not. I just don't think he is that throw in day one guy. I don't think he is. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
He's talented. He's a freaking, nature. Great, combine results as you mentioned. As we talked about before on this show, it's combine, but I want to see how things go when you put the pads on and it's game time. Like those are two completely different things. Yeah, you might have had a great 40, great vertical jump, whatever, but it's a different game when the pads are actually on, and it's time to go play football. So that's my thing with Anthony Richardson. I don't think he's ready.
Well, I agree. I think he's going to. I think people are now saying, "Oh, well, who's the next Josh Allen? Who can I?" Josh Allen wasn't very accurate in college and even in the first few years in the league, but maybe I can. Everybody's like, well, I can maybe coach him up. So we'll see. I wish him well, but I hope it's a good situation. The thing I'm looking forward to is Jordan Love and Green Bay. And just, it's good to not even have Aaron Rodgers in the building where it's a distraction. And I just wish him well. I mean, he's had time to learn. I wish he'd gotten more reps over the years, but it's his show now. So I'd like to see what he can do.
Yeah. I think Jordan Love is, like you said, it's his show. It's his time to shine. So we'll see what happens with him and the Packers. And hopefully he can do good. But like you said, NFC North, division that is kind of, it's just like in the water, right? They're just coasting through. They're not completely bad, like maybe the NFC South or maybe like the East was some years ago, but they're just kind of wading through the water. So we'll see how things go with that in next year. But moving on to the AFC, the AFC North in particular, the Cleveland Browns. Now, Deshaun Watson, everybody knows stories, right? So moving to the football side of things, he's the established starter. He's the established starter in Cleveland now. Do you think can he elevate the Browns? Can they get back to the playoffs to contention?
I don't think so. Now, I know he didn't look great last year coming back except, later in the season, but I like Deshaun Watson, but I think he has to have the right coaching. I think he has to have the right system, and he has to have, strong receivers, and they all have to be on the same page. And so he's just going to have to do it. I'm going to have to see him do it before I really think whether he's good or great. But again, just like I said, this is Detroit. This is still Cleveland. Okay. I thought Deshaun Watson played very well in Houston, but he also has some really dynamic and good receivers at times. So he had the I'm not remembering. He had the receiver from Clemson.
Hopkins.
Yes, Hopkins. Yeah.
Hopkins, yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah. So let's see if Amari Cooper or some of those folks can step up and provide him with a good target. Last year again it was not fair to judge him based on the long layoff. I just don't think he's as good as people think. I mean, and some people are judging him by the by the contract he received. I think Cleveland was being Cleveland again, and I think they way overpaid. They gave the guaranteed contract, and I just don't see him making Cleveland even any better than they were a few years ago when they made the playoffs. Let me just say, I think that division is going to come back and be a monster. So where does Cleveland, land after that? I mean, they're in the division with the Bengals, who are in the Super Bowl, and in the AFC Championship game. You still got the Ravens, and we don't know what their quarterback, but I have a lot of faith that Harbaugh will figure it out. And the Steelers. Right now, who would you say who would you pick? What would be your order in terms of the order of finishing in that division? And then that might be your answer to your question about Deshaun Watson.
First, the Bengals. That's clear and obvious. Now, behind that is where things get a little touchy. I mean, I could go the Ravens here just based off, talent and experience. But then again, they, quarterback situation is a little rocky right now. So,
right.
I'm still going to go the Ravens right there. And then I'm going to slide the Steelers over the Browns right there.
Mm-hmm.
I think, they struggled early on in the year, but the offensive play calling was really garbage. So they started to get things going later on in the year. Kenny Pickett, I think, he's gonna only get better.
Yeah.
Pickett is a great receiver. That they pair those two up was a good idea. And Najee Harris, of course, out the backfield, Bama guys. So I think the Steelers are gonna do a lot better next year than people think they are.
I agree.
That's my thing.
Okay, and so I think we went back to the old. Let's look at the quarterback situation. Okay, who is the best quarterback, and then let's go from there. And clearly, Cincinnati has the best situation, and it is a question mark. I think clearly for Baltimore and Pittsburgh, but I think even Cleveland, even though they have an established quarterback in the league, but I think like you, I think Kenny Pickett's going to figure some things out. To me, Pittsburgh just didn't have the right system for him. But if he can get the receivers to go along with the strong running game, I think the Steelers could be fine. Look, Tomlin found a way again to not have a losing record with the situation he had. They were 9-8, so and just barely missing out on the playoffs after a really bad start and finishing with 4 wins in a row. So I think for Cleveland, I look to see them to be the third or fourth team in that division right now. If you ask me, I'd say to be the fourth in that division. They won 7 games last year. Jacoby Brissett wasn't that bad. And that's the question I'd say also is, what was the real variance or difference between Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson? Really, I mean, so.
It's going to be, Deshaun Watson is in a place right now where, this is a guy that many deemed a generational talent at the quarterback position, and he was I don't know. I mean, I really want him to do. I do want him to do good because he's so talented, and he's got to be in that. The system has got to be good for him. It's got to work. I want him to make his name in the NFL again, like he was some years ago when he was with the Texans. But then all that, the buildings came crashing down, and we all know how that ended for him. But I want to see him. I just, for his sake, just put himself, back in the conversation again. So we'll see if he can do that. But moving on to the Commanders, they are officially, they're being sold. So we already got some people making some bids. Josh Harris and the Mitchell Rails group, including Magic Johnson, have already submitted a $6 billion bid, which does meet Snyder's asking price there. So what do you think about this, man? Is this the Commanders are about to head into new ownership?
Yeah. To me, it can't happen fast enough. I wish Dan Snyder wasn't going to make so much money off of it, but it's definitely been time for him to go. I think I want it to happen sooner than later, because once that person and the new lead ownership is in place, a lot of other things can start to fall into place. And what I mean by that is they need a new stadium. They just need to clean house in terms of their front office and personnel, the way they've kind of managed that place. So you got to get all of that out of there, and that doesn't happen overnight. And so I would like to. I'm very happy that Dan Snyder is, because I'm a Chicago Bear fan, but I've lived in the DC area for 30 years and was a big fan of the Redskins as a kid. I mean, I like those Joe Theismann, John Reagan's teams, Art Monk. And when I came here, my first year out of college, they won the Super Bowl. And so they were one of my top 3 teams of all time that I liked. But once Dan Snyder took over, and I've got a lot of family and friends in this area that like the Commanders, and I'm like, how can you support them? Like Dan Snyder is treating the fans poorly, treats his players, ex-coaches poorly. So I'm just relieved that I can at least again kind of pull for him. The one thing I would say is with the bids. I think them throwing Magic Johnson in there and they put that name out. I would still like to see the lead majority person for whatever group goes in be a African American, and so but I can't say it should be this one or it should be that one. I would just like that to be something that happens, because that old boys network needs to have another voice maybe in the room. Now, look, the thing that talks is money. So it doesn't matter what color somebody is, and the Jaguars have a man of color, but I would just still like to see an African-American majority owner, especially in DC, Chocolate City.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's time. It's been time. Something that needs to happen. We see with the coaches and this and that. It's unfortunate. How things have transpired. In the NFL, and they claim they're about certain things and they're pushing for this and that, but so it's something I do want to see. We'll continue to monitor that, man. But yeah, the Commanders are being sold finally. So
yeah. So, and I would love one of the things. Not that I wanted Dan Snyder to keep the team, but he was going to actually build the stadium right near me. Now, I didn't want the traffic, but I know this new stadium that he had in mind was going to be state of the art. And it's going to be right here in Woodbridge, because Dan Snyder moved from his home in Maryland about 2 years ago to the Lorton, Alexandria area, and so he's not far from me. And that's why I knew he was going to try to put that stadium right here, but they were not going to approve any state funding as long as he owned it. So we'll see, where they put the new stadium and everything. I don't want the traffic, but I would like, what it can bring to our community in terms of resources.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's good. But yeah, so Rusty, that pretty much wraps us up for the podcast today, man. Thank you for coming on and
appreciate it, man.
Giving your insights. And again, we'll continue to monitor everything throughout the off season. We're getting closer to the draft, man. Less than a month away, so. Thank God for that. I'm really interested to see how this turns out for all these teams, and will these teams find their next franchise cornerstones? We will find out on April 27th in the NFL draft. But until then, make sure you guys stay tuned with us here on Jason Now. Also, check out Rusty's show, the Kirk Sports Show. They got great stuff there. Check them out wherever you can find them at, and we will catch you guys next time. Rusty, thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, man. God bless.